bring me happy. Ooh. Thank you, happy.
You found us for another exciting week of Star Trek news and interviews, fellow spacefarers, and welcome to A Captain's Log, the ultimate Star Trek talk show where we explore the final frontier one warp speed interview at a time. I'm your host, Brian Kreutz. She's your lovely host, Lily Fox-Lim, and I've got my tricorder ready to scan the latest news and interviews here on A Captain's Log, but we are going to welcome a distinguished actress to our show, and her name is Natalija Nogulich. But wait, I can't do this alone. Joining me, as always, is the best of our show, the usually wearing Science Officer Blue, Lily Fox-Lim, who's brilliant.
Well, I'm wearing red, but live long and prosper, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here, Ambassador Brian. Let's dive into subspace anomalies, debate the Prime Directive, and maybe even share a cup of Klingon blood wine.
Yes.
Just kidding. Just kidding, I'll stick to tea. Oh, Grey, halt. While admirals may be only a small part of Star Trek's long-running history, there is one whom many Next Generation and Deep Space Nine fans would undoubtedly recognize, and that is Admiral Nachayev.
Yes, absolutely. An excellent admiral choice, Lily. Now, Natalija Nogulich is a well-respected actress who played the Admiral character just, I think, 5 or 6 times. Lily, you would know, but it's the Admiral that Lily just mentioned. So adjust your universal translators and prepare for an interstellar interview, because leading up to Star Trek, there will be many memorable moments on screen that we all recall about the Chicago native actress brought to the big screen or small screen with sincerity, dedication, and a drive to be one of the finest character actors I've ever seen.
Wow, truly. Our mission is to seek out the many moments of Natalija's career highlights, boldly discussing where no 1 or 2 interview shows have gone before.
Yes, of course. And maybe we can figure out why this red-shirted, not Lily this time, this red-shirted Admiral Nachayev was in scenes opposite Picard or the stars like Sisko as well in Deep Space Nine of these Trek series she was in each and every time.
Jean-Luc Picard in The Next Generation, or Benjamin Sisko in Deep Space Nine.
That's right.
Admiral Nachayev was a bold, beautiful, believable, and brave admiral about the future trajectory of Starfleet in many key situations, like moving the Native Americans from one planet to another, that we will talk about. BK.
Absolutely. We can't wait for that, Lils, but we do have a super quick news segment this week. I'm going to spout out some Star Trek news, and by the time I'm done, we will both be saying, catch it or see it on Paramount Plus.
But this time we will say catch the show on Netflix.
Oh.
As the single streaming TV show not on Paramount Plus is Star Trek Prodigy.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. But unlike any Star Trek series before it, the entirety of Star Trek Prodigy Season 2 did hit Netflix all at once back on July 1st, 2024. Will this help the fledgling spin-off series, or will the binge model hurt Prodigy's ability to make a comeback? But Prodigy Season 2 will focus on Dal, Zero, Jankum Pog, Gwen, Murph, and our favorite Rock Talk. And they're making their way into Starfleet under the real guidance of Admiral Janeway.
Right. Well, she's sort of real. She's an animated Janeway rather than her hologram counterpart from Season 1.
Right, that's true.
Okay. Ready, BK?
Yes, absolutely. Catch Star Trek Prodigy Season 2 on Netflix! And you can watch all 20 episodes at once on tiny picture-in-pictures if you like, or enjoy one episode at a time.
All of them at once. Well, we'll be back in a moment, and we'll be joined by Natalija Nogulich.
A Captain's Log returns in a moment.
Natalija Nogulich is the perfect example of a person playing a memorable role woven into Star Trek mythos.
Ooh, this week Brian and I welcomed the powerful character actress Natalija Nogulich, who played as Admiral Nachayev in both Star Trek The Next Generation and Star Trek Deep Space Nine. As Nechayev, she brought a very pragmatic approach to Starfleet ethics and is the only Star Trek actor to have the same continuous guest role in 2 Star Trek series at the same time.
Nice.
Let's welcome Natalija to A Captain's Log.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Natalija, let's talk about your first project in front of the camera in the role of Mr. Moss, Honey, from the film Stony Island. Andrew Davis makes his directorial debut, filmed in 1977 in your hometown of Chicago and then released in 1978. Now, the film was a movie musical of sorts. Can you tell us about your experience?
First of all, Andy Davis was a dream to work with. And of course, he went on to do Fugitive and all these other huge movies. But he was starting out. And so it's always fun to be with someone who's doing their debut, because they take such care with everything. But I'll tell you a secret. I mean, my sister, who was working as a casting director and producer of commercials at the time, knew Andy, and he hired her as his casting director, Daniela, my sister. And she got me in the door to meet him. I don't think I would have, I got to be honest, I hats off to my sister for my first, film role. And I think there must have been some convincing going on because I was a little young for Mr. Moss's Honey. His dad played Mr. Moss, Andy's dad, Nate Davis, wonderful actor, wonderful man. And but I was thrilled. I was thrilled. I don't even remember auditioning. I think I met Andy, my sister. I was doing theater then. I was a member of the St. Nicholas Theater, which was W.H. Macy, David Mamet, John Malkovich, that gang. Anyway, so I was thrilled, and then I was terrified. So they went quickly after each other. First was thrilled, then came terrified. As his Honey, he dies in it. Actually, he drops dead at a dinner. My boyfriend in the movie, and I have to come up with a sobbing scene, and I was petrified. I thought, what if I can't do this? What if I can't produce, the emotion that they want? So I went to my teacher, W.H. Macy, who, one of the greatest American actors on 2 feet, in my opinion, then a young actor, but, my teacher. And I said, what do I do? What am I going to do? I think I have to break down. I mean, it didn't say that, but that's, kind of implied. And, he gave me a very interesting piece of wisdom. He said, try not to cry. He said, because that's what people do in real life. And, I thought, try not to cry. How's that going to work? But I went to him, I asked him, I was going to follow his lead, and it actually worked. I mean, I do a lot of homework anyway on background story about my relationships in a movie or a play or TV show, whatever. And given that I was his honey and I created this relationship, and then his being gone and trying not to cry actually produced the desirable results.
Natalija, you've been in a lot of TV, starting with Lou Grant in 1980 to popular series like Designing Women, My Sister Sam, Dynasty, the Craig T. Nelson series, Coach, and The Babysitters Club. Talk about your early career moving into some of these guest roles in your Hollywood career.
It's an interesting thing being a guest on a show because it can go a number of ways. Lou Grant, for example, which was probably my first TV role out there, they were so welcoming. Ed Asner, Bobby Walden, they were just, they made you feel like you were entering their home and welcoming you, which was a good thing because I was still a novice and still a nervous novice, but I was prepared, I'm always prepared. And I think that takes the edge off of the nerves. And, but when I look at that now, that little clip, Lou Grant, I think, the way I see it, I think, oh my gosh, I was so green. I was green as grass after a good rain, but they were wonderful. And I remained friends with Bobby Walden after that, and just a great experience. And then going on to the other ones, I'm not going to name any shows where they weren't inviting, but I would say the ones that you mentioned all were very welcoming. And I always promised myself if I was a regular on a series or even recurring, that when a guest came, I would bend over backwards to make them feel comfortable, because the guest is, nervous usually until you get your sea legs. The Coach story, I played a dance teacher. And I studied dance before I got into acting and continued studying it. So that's kind of and I've actually played a dance teacher on a few different shows, but anyway, and she was Russian, so I had to have a little accent, which was fun and funny. And so I had a scene where I jump up on Craig Nelson, and then I do a couple of, balletic moves, and then I jump down off of him. Well, everything went great during rehearsal, and you rehearse in front of an audience, small audience, and then you shoot at night on the in front of a big audience, and they were already very well established, and they were all sweethearts. Also, I will say that. Well, I don't know exactly what happened, and neither does Craig, but somehow when I jumped up on him for the choreographed, balletic move, he inadvertently dropped me, or I slipped or something. I don't know. We don't know what happened. And I landed on my head on the cement in Warner Brothers stage. And of course they had to stop the show because I went out, I was out. I saw stars. Now, I wasn't out for long, but I did, for the first time in my life, experience what it means to see stars, because you really, and I came to pretty much right away. And of course they were all hovering and get the nurse and this and that. And, the audience was like, well, we didn't pay for this, but, here we go. And anyway, long story short, I was miraculously okay. They took me to the hospital. They continued shooting some other things. And by the time I got to the hospital, I felt fine. I mean, and the production manager went with me, and he was a very prayerful guy, which I appreciated. And, by the time the doctor came into the ER to see me, he said, you don't need to be here. You're fine, which I was. They test you for, how many fingers, etc. And I got back, and by that time, all the suits were downstairs, and I think they probably thought, here comes the lawsuit, which was the farthest thing from my mind. I mean, I just didn't think that way. All I thought was, let's go back to work. Let's finish the scene. By this time, the audience had been dismissed, but we did finish filming, and that was a big relief to them, because if I could continue filming, that meant, I was okay. And
yeah, I'll bet producers were very concerned for you and the liability. But it is a really interesting story, and many of our viewers will remember you on the TV series Coach in that episode. Thank you for going the extra mile to share that with us, Natalija.
And we're so glad that you're okay, Natalija, by the way. You survived a very scary incident there.
Yeah.
He called me the next day. He felt so terrible. It wasn't his fault. It was just a mishap. We don't really know how that happened, but it happened. Years later, I was seeing a play in Hollywood as an audience member, and this gentleman came up to me and he said, "Do you remember who I am?" I said, "I'm sorry, I don't." He said, "I was one of the executives of Coach when you fell and cracked, we thought you cracked your head, but didn't." And he introduced himself, and we shook hands, and he said, "You have no idea how frightened we were that you were in serious damage, because it's cement floor, those studios are not." And I said, "Well, I guess the angels were with me, because I was protected, and I was fine." He said, "Yeah, you caused us a lot of heartache, but then a lot of relief. If you saw it, and it's a good episode, you would not know that there was anything. It was smooth as silk, the way they, put it back together."
And could you tell me how long it was before you recorded the scene as a final with Craig T. Nelson?
It wasn't that long. It was, they took me to the ER. I waited a little while at the ER. I'd say maybe an hour and a half. That by that time, as I said, the audience was dismissed, and I came back, and they were, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, let's go back to work." And they were very solicitous of my well-being and thought, "Are you sure you want to?" I said, "Yeah, sure. Let's finish up."
Natalija, was there a particular TV or film cast that you worked with that was more than memorable, to where you really clicked really well with?
When it comes to TV, I think that you bond more with sitcoms, because you're rehearsing all week and then you do it in front of a live audience. So it's like performing a play almost. And there's a lot more camaraderie with the entire cast. If you're doing a drama, you might have a scene with one person. Among those sitcoms, and I've done so many, well, the most recent Fuller House they were fantastic. And my character was, of course, she was a character. She was also Eastern European or something. So I had this accent that she was smoking and very difficult person, So the whole cast kind of, enjoyed me. So I loved them. I loved designing women, because that character was so great. Primi Horton. And I have since spoken with some of the producers of Designing Women, and they claim that was their favorite episode, and I don't say it's because of me, but it was a very well written episode, and all the gals were a lot of fun. So those are just two sitcoms that stick out.
Natalija, the late 1980s are what we're going to focus on, particularly 1989. They had you cast in a lot of TV and film. Let's touch on some of these. Lili just mentioned the TV series Coach, but also you were in other titles like Out on the Edge as Lynn Myerson, the TV series Dirty Dancing, Neon Empire, perhaps one of the most watched Christmas comedy films of all time, the Chevy Chase film, National Lampoons Christmas Vacation. That's a great one in our household, by the way. You played Frank's wife, Mrs. Shirley. Was this a time and a good point for your career to really take off?
The thing about Christmas Vacation that is so interesting to me, I mean, yeah, I'm in everybody's living room at Christmas time. I get that. I mean, it's amazing. It is not two scenes of the character, and yet it's quite memorable. But the way that if I may, just tell a quick story about how I got that part. I was in LA and I had an agent who was setting me up on commercials, and that was fine. And she set me up on a Pizza Hut commercial, and she said, they want you to prepare something. I said, okay. So I thought that meant, I come from the theater. So if they say prepare something, I think that means a couple of monologues or something. I don't, I hadn't done many commercials, if any. And so I go in and I have a Shakespearean monologue. Oh, and she also said they want you to be like blue collar. So I said, well, I have a Shakespearean monologue I know by heart. I'll just do it with a Bronx accent, and that'll do it. So I do that. And the casting director is looking at me, and she behind the camera, she leans over up, from behind the camera and looks at me like, I don't know. I finished it. Thank you. I went out, and I see everybody else in the waiting room is preparing a testimony about pizzas. That's what they're supposed to prepare. Like, oh yeah, this was the best sausage. And I think, oh, well, screwed that up. Okay. Jeremiah Chechik, who directed Christmas Vacation, directed this commercial. I get a call back. I go to the call. I'm thinking, this is incredible. I get to the call back, and the clients are like, well, we want to see the Shakespearean monologue with the Brooklyn accent, And so I did it, and I got the commercial. It turned out it was a test run commercial, so it didn't have those kind of residuals you hope for. But I got to work with Jeremiah a couple of years later, maybe, or a year. And I get called in to audition for Christmas Vacation, and I see that it's Jeremiah directing it, his first feature. Again, wonderful, wonderful, attentive director in his first, feature. And of course, he remembered, that monologue. And he called me in. He said, I guess, I don't know if all the actors had to meet Chevy, or he kind of had some. He oversaw the casting, as the stars often do. They like to meet. So I went into it was the Warner Brothers office. I guess it was Chevy Chase's office. I'm not sure. And Jeremiah was there, and I go in. Chevy's sitting on the couch, and I walk in, and he introduced me. And there wasn't much to read in terms of dialogue. There were just a few lines. Maybe I did them, maybe I didn't. I can't even remember. But Chevy's sitting there. I go, so Shakespearean monologue for a Pizza Hut commercial, huh? And of course, I blushed a million shades of red, and haha, and cut to I got the part, and so, but I owe it to Jeremiah. I mean, Jeremiah was open-minded enough to bring me in for Pizza Hut, even though I was off the mark in terms of what they wanted in the commercial. audition and then to bring me again for Christmas Vacation. I owe him a lot. Thank you, Jeremiah.
Natalija, let's get into your first role in Star Trek The Next Generation Season 6 episode Chain of Command Part 1. Talk about this first time on a set for the iconic franchise Star Trek, and how did you land the role, and what was the first time you auditioned for Star Trek like?
I did audition before I got Admiral Nachayev, and I can't remember the exact role. I just remember the feedback was she did a good job reading, but she's too strong for this part. I guess I came across strong. I don't know. Like I said, I can't remember, but I was disappointed because obviously a great series. And my agent said, don't worry, the casting people liked you. There'll be something else down the line, you know, and that's the way you have to go about it. You have to think positive. And sure enough, not that long later, the audition for Admiral Nachayev came up, and I really worked hard in preparing it. And I thought, oh, this is in my wheelhouse. Yes, she's strong. She's, not that I haven't played vulnerable in my career, but I do tend to get, the kind of stronger roles. But anyway, so I went in, I auditioned, I nailed it, and I got it. And the first day on the set, being, such a successful series, there's a little bit of nerves there. But what I do when somebody once told me, he said, it's okay to be nervous because it means you'll give something the attention that it merits. And that was, I've always thought about that when I've got, nervous or butterflies. I thought, well, that just means I've got to give it more attention. And I really prepared fully for that first episode, well, for all of them. But the first one, I had a big monologue in the beginning. And many of the cast were sitting around a conference table. Picard wasn't there, but then he comes in and I fire him. Nice, you think, oh, they're going to hate me. I'm coming in. Everybody loves Picard. I mean, he was a beloved character, so humane, and I get to fire him, and then I'm very dismissive of Jonathan Frakes' character also. So I thought, I'm not going to make any friends on this thing, but anyway, I played it, full out, what was required of the script. That's the way I came up in the theater. You honor the script, you don't do what you feel like doing, right? And so I felt, after I got through that opening monologue and I was able to do it in one take, I mean, I was so nervous that I was going to forget something, but I didn't. Then I kind of settled in, and then we did the part where, Picard comes in like, oh, you're relieved of your duties. And so I didn't know I was going to be asked back, but I kind of had an inkling because of the nature of the, firing him and so on. Not firing him, but relieving him of his duties. So the next one came along. I'm not sure if it was the following week or whatever. And then I got more and more confident as I, continued to develop the character, and I got a clear sense of, what she stood for and how principled she was and how for the Federation she was, whereas Picard was more humane and wanted to kind of bend and be, more compromising, but for a good reason. He had his good reasons too. And that's why he was so loved. And so, yeah, that first time out really set the scene for me. I think I managed to do a good enough job where I was asked back.
Natalija, what was it like working with Sir Patrick Stewart?
Working with Patrick Stewart was a joy. I mean, a complete professional, but also very welcoming cast. And it was mostly, like I say, most of my scenes were with him or Jonathan Frakes on the, tangentially, but he did everything he could to make you feel comfortable so that you could do your best, and I mean, he comes from the theater too, and he knows that preparing and rehearsing are, what you want to do. And yeah, I loved working with him. Oh gosh, I would have done anything for it to keep going, but alas, it was the final season.
So let's talk about the role Admiral Nachayev you play, reprised again and again in 2 Trek series. I understand playing Nechayev was influenced by the experiences of your family, many of whom had served in the military.
My dad was in the Army, and he landed in Normandy. He was one of the Normandy invaders, and I cry when I think about it. He was wounded, but he got onto shore, got into France, And then he was wounded and he was sent to London to recover. And they offered for him to stay and train other soldiers in London. And he said, no, I'm going back. He insisted on going back into combat with his buddies. And that valor earned him the Bronze Star. And they fought across 5 countries. He got a presidential citation. He was well decorated. So how did that factor into Admiral Nachayev? Well, I mean, it's not like I sat there thinking, okay, I'm going to be like my dad was in Normandy or something like that. But I think it helped me to understand the commitment, meant the mentality of total commitment to what you're doing and not wavering.
I love this story. Thank you.
A captain's log returns in a moment.
Welcome back to A Captain's Log with an admiral on board. And an ambassador, of course.
Oh, thank you. Next, we're going to show Natalija as Admiral Nachayev telling Captain Picard his priority is to protect the Federation citizens. Let's take a look at this video.
You had a choice. You could have taken the opportunity to rid the Federation of a mortal enemy.
No one is more aware of the danger than I am. But I'm also bound by my oath and my conscience to uphold certain principles. I will not sacrifice them in order
Your priority is to safeguard the lives of Federation citizens, not to wrestle with your conscience.
Yes, a very different authority figure Nechayev brings to Jean-Luc Picard, as he would say, to uphold certain principles.
Love it. Nechayev brings in a very dramatic moment. Your priority is to safeguard the lives of Federation citizens, not to wrestle with your conscience. What a profound line.
It is, and we can now say it's a classic Nechayev outdoing Picard scene.
Yes, which is hard to do.
So good.
Agreed. Well, that wraps today's episode. We've explored fascinating topics in the life and career of Natalija Nogulich. Now, Lily, we laughed and recited Netflix together, right? And we connected with our incredible guest about Star Trek.
Yes, we did. And be sure to return next week for part 2 of our interview with the one and only Natalija Nogulich. Bye for now.
Hello, happy, my old friend. I'm glad you've manifested yourself into a human I can depend on to bring me happy.